Read poems by Langston Hughes. James Mercer Langston Hughes was born February 1, 1902, in Joplin, Missouri. His parents divorced when he was a young child, and his father moved to Mexico. He was raised by his grandmother until he was 13, when he moved to Lincoln, Illinois, to live with his mother and her husband, before the family eventually settled in Cleveland, Ohio. It was in Lincoln that Hughes began writing poetry. After graduating from high school, he spent a year in Mexico followed by a year at Columbia University in New York City. During this time, he held odd jobs such as assistant cook, launderer, and busboy. He also traveled to Africa and Europe working as a seaman. In November 1924, he moved to Washington, D.C. Hughes's first book of poetry, The Weary Blues, Knopf, 1926, was published by Alfred A. Knopf in 1926. He finished his college education at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania 3 years later. In 1930, his first novel, Not Without Laughter, Knopf, 1930, won the Harmon Gold Medal for Literature. Hughes, who claimed Paul Laurence Dunbar, Carl Sandburg, and Walt Whitman as his primary influences, is particularly known for his insightful, colorful portrayals of black life in America from the 20s through the 60s. He wrote novels, short stories and plays, as well as poetry, and is also known for his engagement with the world of jazz and the influence it had on his writing, as in his book-length poem Montage of a Dream Deferred, Holt, 1951. His life and work were enormously important in shaping the artistic contributions of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. Unlike other notable black poets of the period, Claude McKay, Jean Toomer, and Count T. Cullen, Hughes refused to differentiate between his personal experience and the common experience of black America. He wanted to tell the stories of his people in ways that reflected their actual culture, including both their suffering and their love of music, laughter, and language itself. The critic Donald B. Gibson noted in the introduction to Modern Black Poets, a collection of critical essays, Prentice Hall, 1973, that Hughes differed from most of his predecessors among black poets, in that he addressed his poetry to the people, specifically to black people. During the 20s, when most American poets were turning inward, writing obscure and esoteric poetry to an ever-decreasing audience of readers, Hughes was turning outward, using language and themes, attitudes, and ideas familiar to anyone who had the ability simply to read. Until the time of his death, he spread his message humorously, though always seriously, to audiences throughout the country, having read his poetry to more people, possibly, than any other American poet, in addition to leaving us a large body of poetic work. Hughes wrote 11 plays and countless works of prose, including the well-known, Simple books, Simple Speaks His Mind, Simon. He edited the anthologies The Poetry of the Negro and The Book of Negro Folklore, wrote an acclaimed autobiography, The Big C, Knopf, 1940, and co-wrote the play Mulebone, HarperCollins, 1991, with Zora Neale Hurston. Langston Hughes died of complications from prostate cancer on May 22, 1967, in New York City. In his memory, his residence at 20 East 127th Street in Harlem has been given landmark status by the New York City Preservation Commission, and East 127th Street has been renamed Langston Hughes Place. Selected bibliography. Poetry. Collected poems of Langston Hughes. Alfred A. Knopf, 1994, The Panther and the Lash, Poems of Our Times. Alfred A. Knopf, 1967, Ask Your Mama, 12 Moods for Jazz. Alfred A. Knopf, 1961, Montage of a Dream Deferred, Holt, 1951, One-Way Ticket. Alfred A. Knopf, 1949, Fields of Wonder. Alfred A. Knopf, 1947, Freedom's Plow. Musette Publishers, 1943, Shakespeare in Harlem. Alfred A. Knopf, 1942, The Dream Keeper and Other Poems. Knopf, 1932, Scottsboro Limited, The Golden Stair Press, 1932, Dear Lovely Death, Troutbeck Press, 1931, Fine Clothes to the Jew. Alfred A. Knopf, 1927, The Weary Blues. Alfred A. Knopf, 1926, Cross Letters from Langston, University of California Press, 2016, Selected Letters of Langston Hughes. Alfred A. Knopf, 2015, Remember Me to Harlem, The Letters of Langston Hughes and Carl Van Vechten, 1925–1964, Alfred A. Knopf, 2001, The Arna Bontemps Langston Hughes Letters, Dodd, Mead, 1980, Good Morning, Revolution, Uncollected Social Protest Writings by Langston Hughes, Hill, 1973, Simple's Uncle Sam, Hill and Wang, 1965, Something in Common and Other Stories, Hill and Wang, 1963, Tambourines to Glory, John Day, 1958, Simple Stakes Acclaim, Reinhardt, 1957, I Wonder as I Wonder, Reinhardt, 1956, Laughing to Keep from Crying, Holt, 1952. Simple Takes a Wife, Simon. 1950, The Ways of White Folks, Knopf. 1934, Not Without Laughter, Knopf. 1930, Dramyth Plays to 1942, Mulatto to the Sun Du Move, University of Missouri Press. 2000, The Political Plays of Langston Hughes, Southern Illinois University Press. 2000, Mulebone, HarperCollins. 1991, 5 Plays by Langston Hughes, Indiana.